At this point, it's been a long time without being around people. For over a month now, we've been told we can't go about our normal routines and hang out with the people we normally would. And I don't know about you, but that's been really hard for me. And the reason is community matters. When we're with people, it matters. Recently, 2 of my pals and I have been working out on FaceTime in the morning. Now, we all do different workouts, but we're all together during it. And in some ways, it's been really good for me. I've been able to see my friends, I'm working out, and it makes it working out a lot easier when there are other people there encouraging you. I don't know if they feel the same way, but it's been better for me. Now, there are times where there are screams of frustration or whining, mostly by Zach, crying, mostly by Megan, and terms thrown around like, I'm literally dying right now. But for the most part, this has been better for us. It's better because sometimes when you work out with people, it's easier. Things with other people are easier at times. So we've been in a series about being bold, and we've been looking at the book of Daniel, and his example can really teach us some things about being bold. The first week, we talked about Daniel and his friends and how they were bold because they filled up on God first. And there was a reflection question that I asked you guys to think about. When it comes to your faith, what are you filling up on? Are you filling up on the things of this world, or are you filling up on God? And being bold can be scary, but one thing I've learned is that when you have people that help support you in being bold, it makes it easier. Sometimes just simply having someone around you can help you to be more bold. This is true in a lot of our life. It's true in working out, it's true in most of the things we do, and it's especially true in our faith. When we have others there with us, it's easier for us to be bold. So Daniel and his friends resisted the rules, customs, and expectations of Babylon in order to take a bold stand against the kingdom. And that was not God's kingdom. And that's why they did that. And because of that, Daniel actually won favor in the king's eyes. And he was given a position in government, and he was allowed to appoint some of his friends to influence the kingdom at that time. Daniel chose 3 of his friends to help him rule the kingdom of Babylon. Their names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We're going to turn to Daniel 3, or you can go ahead and follow along on the screen. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messages to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the province officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had just set up. So all the officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races, nations, and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown in a blazing furnace." So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever race or nation or language, bowed to the ground and worshiped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But some of the astrologers went to the king and informed him on the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Long live the king! You issued a decree requiring all the people to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments. That decree also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king, in his anger, had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in it. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. Go ahead and keep your Bible open because we're going to return to that passage. So they're told that they needed to bow down and worship the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew they could not bow down to anyone other than their God, even if that meant death. So they didn't do it. They refused to worship anyone other than their God. They refused to give up on their convictions. That is a bold stand to take. As a result, they were thrown into the center of an enormous furnace. They knew that the consequences of their bold stance could be death, but they still did it because they knew they weren't alone in this. It can be difficult to be bold when you feel alone. The truth is, it's easier to be bold when someone else is with you. I'm not saying that you can't be bold on your own. You can. All I'm saying is that there are times when having others with you or others that believe in the same things, it can make it easier on you. When I was a little girl, one of my favorite Bible stories was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I will always remember those 3 names. And if you notice, those 3 names went together every time in the passage. It did not mention just one of them. It was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It was said every time, those 3 names. They were in it together. They weren't alone. They were able to be bold because they had each other in it. I can't imagine what was going through their heads as they were about to be thrown into the furnace. But they stood their ground, and they basically said that God is faithful. This is all going to be worth it. They believed that. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego understood that following Jesus was easier because they had each other. So let's see how the rest of this plays out in verse 24. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted, "I see 4 men unbound, walking around in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a god." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their head was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angels to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this." The king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had each other to help them be bold. But did you notice that there was someone else in the story? There was a 4th man in the furnace with them. And it was clear to everyone that it was God. I don't think these men would have said that it's easy to take a stand to be bold. But I think they would agree on this, that being bold is easier when you're being bold together. God has created us to be relational. We're built for relationships and we crave relationships. And that is why during this time, it's been really hard on a lot of us to not be able to spend time with other people. I know some of you are struggling with that. We thrive when we have others around us to encourage us and to cheer us on. That's true with working out. That's true with every area of our life, but it's especially true when it comes to our faith. When we do difficult things with like-minded people, difficult things become easier. So here's my question to you. Are you surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded people, or are you trying to be bold on your own? You know my saying, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Who are your friends right now? Are they people that push you towards faith, or are they people that tear you away from God? There are plenty of times where you're going to need to be bold about your faith. You probably won't have the consequence of being thrown into a fiery furnace, but it might feel like that. Sometimes God might be nudging you to share your faith with someone and tell them what you believe and why you believe it. Or maybe he's telling you to invite a friend to church online or to Summit. Or maybe he's asking you to defend someone that is getting picked on or bullied. Last week we said if you want to be more bold, you need to fill up on God first. This week I hope that you see if you want to be more bold, you need to learn how to be bold together. Now what I want you to do is take out your phone. Don't open up TikTok, Jenna, or don't open up any other games or apps, but I want you to text. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to start a message, and I want you to write to the people that have helped you to be bold in life, the people that have pushed you in your faith, the people that have encouraged you in God. Send it to anyone who has helped you in your faith. Send it to your Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednegos, the people who you could trust to stand with you when you're in a fire. If that challenge was easy for you, that's great. Be thankful that God has placed those people in your life. He has made no mistake in placing those exact people in your life. Now, if that was more of a challenge for you, then start by praying to God to place people in your lives and for your eyes to be open to who He has placed in your life. This week, I hope that you take a look at the people you have in your life, and I hope those people help you take a bolder stand for God. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future. You may not be hanging out with friends right now, but you still talk to them. Are they the right company to be having in your lives? And if they are, that's great. I encourage you to keep encouraging them and to thank them and to help them grow stronger in their faith. If they're not the right people, if they're not the right company, then maybe you need to consider not hanging out with them when quarantine is lifted. Maybe you shouldn't be spending as much time with them as you do when this is all over. And maybe you might need to find some new friends. I don't have to explain to you what is good or bad company that you should have in your life. You know that by now. What I'm asking you to do is to not justify the people that you surround yourselves with. I challenge you to be bold. Surround yourselves with like-minded people. Cheer each other on, encourage each other, be bold together, and do it for Christ. Will you pray with me? Dear Lord, I thank you for who you have put in my life, especially. I thank you for the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednegos that have stood with me in a fire. The people that have pushed me towards you. Lord, I ask that for everyone right now, that they would be thinking of those people for them. Would we reach out to those people? Would we encourage them in their faith? Would we encourage them to be bold because they have helped us to be bold? You are a great God, and you stand with us through everything, Lord. And right now, it may feel like we are in a fire, and it's uncomfortable, and it's not fun right now. But we know that you're with us. We know that you are always by our side. So, Lord, as we go, would you continue to put people in our lives that will help us to be more bold towards you. In your name, amen.